Welcome to Alt Consulting Conversations. This is where we explore how strategy, innovation, and advisory models are being reshaped by technology and new business models. In my book, Alt Consulting, I describe several emerging archetypes that are redefining the consulting landscape. These range from solo consultants and top heavy advisory firms supported by a tech enabled analyst layer to platforms that provide consultants on demand. Another archetype that is gaining momentum is what I call consulting as a product, where insight, research, strategic exploration are delivered through software rather than traditional project based engagements. One of the companies featured in the book under this archetype is FifthRow, and I have the pleasure of speaking today with its founder. My guest today is Jan, founder and CEO of FifthRow. Jan spent more than 15 years running a global corporate venture studio that helped launch over 120 ventures with large organizations. Through that experience, he saw firsthand how much knowledge work still depends on slow processes, fragmented tools, and external consultants. With Fifth Row, he is now building what he calls as an autonomous workforce for modern enterprises. The platform deploys AI agents that automate research, foresight, due diligence, venture creation, allowing organizations to expand what their teams can accomplish. It's great to have you, and thank you for joining today.
Thanks. It's a great intro.
So let me start with the big picture. From where you are right now, your vantage point, where do you think the consulting industry is headed over the next decade?
Well, I think we're recording this a week after, 2 weeks after the Sequoia article that just came out, that the next $1 trillion company is going to be a tech company that is cloaked as a services company. I find it a little peculiar that people are now catching up to it, because almost exactly 2 years ago, NFX said, there's an article from NFX that says, basically coined the term service as a software, not software as a service, but service as a software, right? And that basically the new AI age is going to be taking budget from the labor market, which is about $5 trillion in their estimation, and putting it into these new services, right? So these new classes of services. So even 2 years ago, I was looking at it like, okay, this is where we need to go. Where I think the Sequoia article is on point right now is that we have gone through the cycle of building a platform, a marketplace, et cetera, ultimately to go back. I would say, I was talking to a friend today, to get to about 360 degrees back at the very beginning and be like, okay, this actually needs to be sold as consulting. This needs to be sold the same way people are used to buying it, because there's so much noise in the tooling space versus you need to deliver outcomes anyways, and customers buy outcomes anyways. The established behaviors of I'm buying this outcome and there's a person that I can talk to, and there's a lot more other people, the analysts that do all the work, et cetera. I don't really get to talk to them that much. I talk to this one person that sold me that thing, and I trust, and I'm going to yell at them when things don't go well, right? The accountability of it, that's still there. People still want it, right? So it's almost immaterial how it gets done, as long as you can trust that it's done very, very well. So for me, the journey over the past actually 3 years is kind of going full circle to a model that's going to become very similar to what we used to do, but much larger consultancy with much better margins.
And there's a unique advantage sort of you bring in when you're founding a company as compared to others. You have done it 100 plus times in venture studio setup, working closely with large organizations. So what motivated you to specifically start Fifth Row? What problem were you seeing in the market that convinced you that this particular product needed to exist?
Well, I started coding and designing when I was 14. I'm a product guy. And I always say I randomly became a CEO of an agency or consultancy. We became over 100 people, and that's not what I kind of set out to do. I set out to kind of build systems. And when we got to a place where we understood this is how you do venture building, and we had a kind of a meta process that worked across any industry, I was like, basically I lost interest in it, right? Like I solved that problem, but that problem was you need people. You need to always hire more people as like the same process, right? So even before ChatGPT, the first version came out, I had drafts of how I want to transform U Plus, that was the consultancy, into something like a FifthRow right now. But the tech wasn't there. So I was kind of waiting for this tech to come in. So my frustration was like, we keep doing the same thing, the same process. It has to be productized. How can we productize it, right? And then about 3 years ago, I think February 2023, I started seeing things that my friends brought me from OpenAI hackathons in the Bay Area. And I'm like, okay, this is my whole team. Like this part of my team that, is doing this for 2 weeks. And now it was done in like 30 seconds. Of course, the quality was so-so, but you could kind of see the trajectory that was going. So that was the main impetus for us going and trying to build the first version of FifthRow, which was just venture building automation, just our own process. And then it scaled from there.
Right. And since you're working closely with clients, what are you hearing from them? What shifts are they seeing in their work, in their own organizations when it comes to strategy and knowledge work?
So I think the shifts are continuing and continuous, right? So as new capabilities come out, everybody, I feel like everybody is it's always big ships. We work with Fortune 500s mostly, large organizations in the US or Europe. And the discussions are always, let's say, 3 to 6 months, maybe 9 months behind the bleeding edge. So what we have to do is we have to translate that and translate the FOMO of, oh, but Claude Cowork exists now, right? But you have processes from 19 whatever, right? So what are we going to do about this? So we increasingly find that it is no longer a challenge for people to believe that these technologies can meaningfully replace the work of consultants or analysts. But you have to redesign the processes, right? You need to redesign the organization. So that becomes a topic of discussion a lot more. Plus, it becoming a lot more proactive and always on, right? So instead of, hey, I have this like venture building thing that I can run anytime, it's like, no, it's running by itself, right? It's like a thing that I have now that I didn't have before, that I previously would have hired consultants, external people, internal people, or just bought some reports as a snapshot. And ultimately it comes down to how do we make better decisions faster, shorten the cycle time so that we, just faster in doing business than our competitors. So it's the process change and it's the always onness of these systems.
One of my reflections has been in the last 3 years is I initially hired a few software engineers to automate a standard analysis which I used to do. And yes, it could be done a few clicks here and there. You have an Excel plugin, an API pull in from ChatGPT. And finally, when I did that, a new model came, and I'm like, oh gosh, now this can be done far better using the tool. And now you have Claude work, and there are so many plugins coming in. So when you were building FifthRow, what was the journey? Because when you started, these tools were the models were quite new and they were improving, and now you see a lot of potential and capability which they bring in. So how has been the journey just building FifthRow in the last 3 years?
So in terms of the models, it's early on, nobody knew anything, right? So everybody was just trying to build something. We had the advantage of having, 40 experts that did the thing every day, basically writing prompts and building it. So summer 2023, we basically built very large prompts 40 times over and made it in production. The one thing that we've done from the very beginning was we always build a custom RAG, custom database of sources that we scrape just broadly from the internet. And we knew that that's the thing that we have to do because our customers are immediately going to ask us, like, where's this from? Like, how do you know that's true? So, and that evolved even now, about 50% of our infrastructure costs overall go to fact checking, right? So we found one thing, like if people are okay, at least enterprises are okay to wait for it to be correct, like it has to be correct. The correctness, the provenance, where things come from, sourcing, explainability of what's going on is the number one thing. It's it's table stakes. If you don't have that, and none of like ChatGPT, Claude, etc., still don't have it, right? So for enterprise, this is something that we spent a lot of time on early on, because we of course had customers where it worked really well, customers where we were just blindsided by behaviors of the models, right? So we had to kind of build it up. So that was like one of the core tenets. So like, how do we know that this is coming from a reputable source, that it's good, et cetera? So we built like a version of deep research in 2023. And the first version of FifthRow was like 50 deep researches, right? Kind of strung together. And until, I guess, a year and a half ago, like September 2024, nothing went out of the platform until a human saw it, right? So we had a human Q&A layer, right? So we would check for all the hallucinations, make sure that everything makes sense, etc. It was easy to do then because we had one process, right? Like it was one app. But increasingly, when we launched the venture building app, the venture building app basically starts with research, goes to ideation, then ultimately builds a landing page and drive traffic to it, right? And if people sign up, then you have proven it with much less cost, but then you can go and talk to the people, right? This is something that we would have charged $500,000, 12 months, $500,000, 12 people, 3 to 5 months, depending on how long it would take. And now it took 2 hours, right, to prepare it. And then the market test would run for a month, but you could run a lot of them in parallel. So that proven to be like superhuman very quickly. Basically, we got to results by the end of 2024 that in 87% of cases, we outperformed the cost per sign up on a new venture build on first try, right? By doing all of this research, just taking our consulting process, packaging it ended up being about, I think, 60 agents, right? And running it. So we did a lot of work on that orchestration. So that was part of the reason why we said, okay, well, U Plus has been doing this. There's like no reason for it to exist. Let's focus on FifthRow. So that's where we kind of switched, and FifthRow became the butterfly out of U Plus. And then I think around like mid 2024, customers started coming to us and said, well, this venture building thing is great, and we understand what you did. It's super impressive. But we don't do venture building. We do startup scouting. We do due diligence and regulatory compliance and market intelligence and whatever, SEC filing analysis and things like that. We have that process like you had for venture building. Can you take that process? Can you automate it for us as well? It's like, okay, this is interesting. But it turns out we did not automate venture building. We automated how to do consulting at scale. So let's actually dive deeper into that. So in terms of the models, right, the models started getting better. And we had this big discussion with my CTO. This is 2 years ago now, when he said, well, we need to have more analysts at all of these different verticals. And like, but the LMs know all of it. Like it was trained on everything, right? Like if you know how to ask, it's going to tell you what the process for strategic foresight or regulatory monitoring or whatever is. What is the best in class, McKinsey, BCG, whatever process, right? So that was one thing, one key decision. The other key decision was it needs to be able to, when it makes mistakes, it needs to be able to see it and adjust, right? And continue working. So we started working with autonomous agents, what now everybody knows, right? But 2 years ago, barely anybody knew. So we started working on that, but it was GPT-4 Turbo, I remember, like expensive and not that turbo. And then in June 2024, if I remember the dates correctly, 4.0 came out. It was for the first time that it was cheap, fast, and intelligent enough so these agents could start working. And we could suddenly describe like a process, like a generic process. It's like, this is how you do strategic foresight, right? And it would be able to go and do it, right? And it would have its thoughts and call some tools and things like that. And it was great. But one agent wasn't able to do that much, right? It was just very limited. And the other thing that we found is it would be super lazy, right? So it would oftentimes say, okay, I'm done. Like I looked at stuff and it's done, right? And the work wouldn't be great. So we're like, okay, so this is something we need to manage. If we strung a bunch of them together, they would like chain the hallucinations, and at the end you would have something very unusable, right? So we're like, okay, well, this is another problem that we have to solve. So we built a product or part of the platform that we called Answers, which is just basically a set of tools that ask questions, use different answer engines. So we just basically looked online and scraped information, etc. Now we're benchmarking OpenAI, Perplexity, all of the different web search capabilities that are there. They give you direct answers, right? But they still hallucinate, right? And then judge. So the concept of LM as a judge, where a quality control looks at the answer of the previous prompt and basically evaluates if it's correct and if the facts are truly there. So like we need to have this on every single question the agent asks. That slows it down quite a bit and it makes it a lot more expensive, but it's the only thing that you can do if you really want to know that things work out. So we had to build that. The other thing that we had to do is we had to build autonomous quality control for these agents that basically can restart these agents and look at, well, you haven't done enough of the work that you're saying you've done, right? Like you try different things, right? So we built this agent as a judge that looks at the other agents, right? And we said, okay, these are the two key things that we have to just build. And the third thing was for us was composability, which is how can we take individual teams of agents and combine, or rather hand off their output into another set of agents that don't have to know about each other at all, right? So we have kind of Lego blocks and we can assemble different applications, right? Because you do TAM assessment for venture building, you do it for a startup analysis, you do it for patent, for invention analysis, if you're a tech transfer office, for example, right? So the same thing can be multiple different places, but it cannot be connected, right? It's just like a workflow. So you have to build these three things. We launched it like a year ago, at the beginning of 2025. And it took us until May to like dial it in for it to actually work. And then we were surprised again because we found that, everybody's like N8N exists and stuff like that. Like you say, hey, models exist. We found that our customers, who are mostly, I would say, VP, director level, plus analysts underneath them in large organizations, they will not build their own agents. They will not prompt anything. They will not do N8N anything. It's just not going to happen. But they're able to chat, right? So we had to kind of figure out how can we like create a chat that builds these agents for them. But even better, can we go and canvas the most used workflows for consulting in these different verticals and build a catalog. So by the summer, we launched a catalog of about 150 different apps, which are these workflows, teams of agents that do consulting grade work with traceable sources. It's typically tens of agents, asks thousands of questions. Everything is fact checked, right? So that's there. We launched as a marketplace, but we found that the capability or the tooling by itself wasn't enough. And what people really wanted to do is they wanted to automate it like a specific process that they had, right? So we covered about 30% of our usage came from our catalog, but everything else was custom. So that was like another sort of unlock that we looked at. And then we found, okay, it's people that care about a process, right? They didn't care about 150 things. They care about this one thing that if it just happened a lot more often, right, without consultants, right, their business will be better in specific ways, right? So for example, one US bank uses us for tracking interest rates for all of their competitors, right? So that and loan parameters, right, as they change. So, and they have it set on autopilot, so it runs every week, right? So they can compare it. So, and that's like a use case that's worth a lot of money for them. Because previously they would do it every once in a while, or they would be too late and it would be surprises, right? So we found, okay, so it's like stuff like this, but then we found more, there's like also an explanation layer. The fact that it happens, you still want to talk to a human, right? So that's another unlock. And then the last unlock we found is like vast majority of our users just want to know, hey, what is everybody else doing? And what should I do given what everybody else is doing? Like, what is the impact on me, right? Recommended. And then what we found at the beginning of this year is like, okay, and do it, right? So EU AI Act is coming out. It's important for you because you do AI stuff, run regulatory impact analysis. Don't even ask me, just run it, tell me, right? And also, I want you to do the 60-page report, but I don't want to read it, right? So I want you to do the diligent work that I know that the platform can do, but then I want a summary And if I get to talk to someone about this, even better, right? So this is the full circle kind of that we've kind of gone to. So now we're at the stage that the tooling is done, the platform works. If a new model comes out, amazing. It makes it like simpler for us to deliver the work. But now basically the platform is moving a lot more from, hey, we're like a software marketplace to no, we're like a consulting company that just delivers end-to-end the outcomes, right? So it's fully in line with what Sequoia is writing.
That, I think, for anyone who is listening to this conversation is how a venture is built. So you showed all the possible pivots in the last 3 years based on what you're seeing in the market, what customers are telling you, what market signals you are seeing, and that's how you pivot. So, you know, aside from the conversation that we are having, that's, I think, a very good insight into how you build a company. But when you sort of introduce FifthRow, which is now a much more sophisticated tool and a product that clients are using, I often say in the transformation projects which I do that AI is not a tool problem. It's a people problem. The behavior has to change. People have to understand what that tool is. Because if I go back like 20, 25 years back, when software was introduced in companies, utilization was really bad. And they would say, hey, we have these zillions of features, but people are using like 2% of the software. They are not using it to full potential. So how are you trying to solve the behavior problem where the analysts or strategy team members or others who are using FifthRow would actively change their way of working and figure out how they should, because earlier they had option of, hey, let's call a consultant to do this work, or just do a Google search and let me know what needs to be done. Now you have a powerful system. Either I use it or I want somebody else to use it. So how are you sort of wrestling with that?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. One of the things is changing people's behavior is the hardest thing to do, right? So this is going to be the draggiest issue that you can have. And I think what we try to, like one of the mistakes that we've made is we try to jump too quickly to that. It's like, okay, you don't need a consultants now. It's just like, here's the platform, you can do it by yourself. And like, but I don't know how to do it by myself, right? And I always ask someone, right? And they would send me slides, and then I would show the slides to my boss, right? And the boss would say, the slides are crap. So I would go to a consultant, and I was like, the slides are crap. And then the work would get done, right? So, and then I would be at, like, if I do it now, I'm at risk, right? For my career. So, and this hasn't changed. This hasn't changed, right? I think there's a lot more pressure on people now with like, hey, but AI exists. Like you should somehow be able to do it with AI, and nobody knows what AI is. And we have an agent for that, right? But like, what is an agent? So I think even through all that hype, the inner workings of companies haven't really changed. So what we're trying to do is, one of the things is, I think one to 5 or 1 to 10 of users on our platform are super users, and then everybody else in that team benefits from them. This is one of the things that we've learned. And those are the system thinkers, those are the people that will spend the hours to automate it once and then just click a button and run it all the time, right? And they will be the stars, and those are the people that you want to have in your team. Now the question is, what do you do with the rest of that's more like an organizational question. What do you do with the rest of the team? It's not like they're bad at or anything. Is it like, do you want them to own these systems, or should they do something else? Ultimately, my belief is, even in our company, even with me, it's like I am less and less the person who does the work, and our developers as well, but we're organizing a system that does the work for us. And we're setting the parameters and setting the guardrails and all of that stuff, right? So we have an army of bots now that do our bug fixes and small feature requests. And then a human checks it, right? Like, but there's a system, like somebody designed the system of how these bots get spun up and like what they do and what context they have, et cetera. Like that becomes a job. That becomes honestly the job of our CTO and our head of QA, which previously that was not their job at all, right? So the jobs are changing dramatically in startups. It's of course going to be quicker. So like that's kind of what's on the ground. It's like 1 to 5, 1 to 10 is a super user. Okay, so what do you do about it? The other people want the outcome as well, but it's too daunting. So that's why we're turning on this proactivity. It's like, I know who you are, Utsaf. I know what your company's mandate is for FifthRow, and I know what you care about, right? So given the company mandate, given your profile and your usage and everybody else's usage, let me look through the FifthRow knowledge on you and just like recommend what the next action might be, and then just go and take the next action and give you the benefit. And through a feedback loop of like, have you clicked on it, right? Have you interacted with the content that the platform has sent you? Then it is this our like button, right? Like it's like, okay, this is more of what you like. Okay, we're going to send you more of what you like, right? But this is like proactive kind of consulting that you don't have to deal with. That's one layer of how we can like induce a lot more usage and a lot more value. But the other one is going a half step back and just saying, okay, we're just going to have people that are going to be at the front that you can talk to. They're not going to do the analytical work, but they're going to do the change management work. They're going to explain things. They're not going to be blockers for you or upsells suddenly for like, oh, you want this next analysis? Oh, this is another 2 weeks and however many junior man days, right? It's going to be there. Like, let's start it. The platform can do it. We're gonna do it. And then it's much more senior check-ins, right? So we see that we went full platform, and now we had to build a tech, but people still want to run projects. And somebody, like two quotes from the past week kind of stand out for me. Somebody said, we left millions of dollars of services revenue on the table for hundreds of thousands of dollars of SaaS revenue. Right? And it feels like a lot of the like AI consulting discussion is very much this, right? And the Sequoia articles like came at the right time into this discussion. Everybody else is saying as well, this is the third one, not the second one. Everybody else is saying agentic AI platforms like ours never work out of the box in enterprises. You always need to set them up and always need to work with these people. It's a misnomer that it just like works like that. This is a Silicon Valley thing, like constantly discussing with people. Like this, it never just works. And it's not the platform can't do it, but it needs to be plugged into specific data sources and blah, blah, blah. So actually really useful. The second quote was, delivery is now faster than discovery. And I see it for us. I've seen it. This has really changed over the past 3 months. That we can build any feature we want, like literally any feature we want. I yesterday asked, we have a Japanese potential Japanese client, and I'm like, hey, what would it take to like translate everything on the platform to Japanese? And the answer was like a lot of cursor credits, right? And probably a day of somebody's time. Right? Because we have only English, right? So if we did Japanese, then we can do any other language. So any other language takes 1 day, right? So that's the barrier right now versus previously this would be like 2-3 weeks maybe, right? Certainly not one person. So we had to like change our behavior of like, how does information get to the developers when writing the code is no longer a barrier, right? So this is organizational redesign. I'm going a little bit further from what you were asking, because you were asking about our customers, but I feel like we are on the forefront of how the organizations change. So I think we need to do it step by step and introduce it step by step. And giving them a human face at this moment right now is probably the easiest fix for actually getting value and utilizing also the benefits of the developments over the past 3 years.
As I hear you, there's one more, problem that you're solving, which might not be something that you're selling. So if you look at traditional consulting firms who are using AI tools and have the same hierarchy of analysts, associates, senior associate, and so on, it's very difficult to delegate work using AI tools, because my context as a partner versus a manager versus an analyst is very different. So earlier we used to get like a good enough presentation deck, and the manager would put a lot of yellow stickies and the partner would put more stickies, and you will keep on working and iterating on it. Now the analyst would actually come back with a 10-pager, very good looking slide deck. Seems like a lot of good work has been done. But when you look into it, they're like, oh, you missed this one lens and now you have to redo everything. So a lot of rework is happening. And maybe the way you have set up your agents to do different kinds of work, somebody's a judge, somebody's just reviewing things, that might be a very interesting way for consulting firms or service firms to uh, sort of look at and see if they can learn anything from that in terms of how you do your work distribution or delegation going forward if you're purely a service company. So that's something just sort of hit me when you were sort of explaining how you have designed Fifth Row. But when you go back in 2035 and see how consulting world has evolved, what predictions would you make?
I think it's very difficult for 2035, but I can tell you a framework of how I think about it. So consulting for me has three layers. It's data and analysts and the human layer on top that talks to customers. Right now, the analysis is already automated. It's what we do, right? So that layer goes away. The problem with that is what drives most of the revenue, like the portion of the revenue on the proposal that you're sending to a customer, right? So there's a massive innovator's dilemma on how to change it, and we're in discussions with basically all of the large consultancies. And right now they're looking at efficiency, sort of how to enable their internal people, etc. There is going to be a massive reorganization at one point, and what FifthRow is trying to build is like, what is the biggest consultancy you can build without any consultants up front or any analysts up front, right? But deliver the value of what the consultancy should bring, right? Something that you don't have internally, that requires external know-how, cross-market understanding, and needs to be, I always say, we need to be blamable, right? We need to have a mandate where, somewhere in the boardroom is like, why do we do this? Because FifthRow said it, right? And we trust FifthRow, right? So that has to be that. So the analyst layer is not a moat. The human touch layer is a moat in terms of the customer relationships that you already have. The only biggest long-term moat and the human touch is going to stay being a moat as long as humans buy from humans, right? What happens in the next 9 years? I'm not necessarily sure, because you see things like OpenClaw, right, like rising right now, and there's Moldbook and things. Facebook literally just today or yesterday bought that, right? So you can see that these marketplaces, they will be bots buying from bots, right? So then the human layer is not as important, at least for this subset of the market. The market's going to be small, and then it's going to grow rapidly, right? And then the third is data, and new primary data. And I always give an example of like canvassing company in India, right? Where people go door to door. The data from that is super valuable, right? I would buy that company right now, right? Because that data doesn't exist yet, right? And you will need to keep getting new data to get better and better information about that market, right? But it's very physical right now how to get this information. So source of primary data that's constantly new, journalism as well could be one that you look at it, is going to be a real moat. So I would look at, my prediction for consulting is it's data pools and established workflows that do the analysis as if it was consulting before, but delivers it as a much more piecemeal value. Or like I can buy, like basically what we launched, the marketplace that we have on the website right now, where you could pay, I don't know, $50 to get like a really good investment memo. I think it's going to look a lot more like that, but not now. At some point in the future.
Last question. So what advice would you give to fellow challenger consulting firms that are trying to build new models to deliver consulting value differently?
I would look at two places. I would look at the data. I think there are two big opportunities right now. Like, can you find a source of data that, like, for example, if you're doing secondary market analysis, but that's cheap now, right? So that's not how big is a market of X? Unless you have proprietary data, everybody has the same information. And previously, the human labor to get to the number was like determining the value of the thing, right? And then the size of the market of people who would buy it would determine the price. That's no longer like, you can, like on FifthRow, you can do it now, and it's like a fraction of not $1, but like a couple tens of dollars probably to get like a really good analysis on something. So that's not it. What are new sources of data that you could own and base your consulting around that? And the other area, and then I'm discarding the analysis layer completely, because there's so many things you could build by yourself, even with Claude Code or Cursor or whatever. You have to look at the fact checking, because that really, when this all breaks down very, very quickly, and there's so many examples of that. So find a tech partner or something for that. And then it's the big opportunity right now is, I think, retraining, process change management, right? Of like, you have all this AI here, like what should the organization look like, right? and go sell that. So some combination of these things is probably where the opportunity for net new things lies right now.
This has been a fascinating conversation. I think thank you so much for joining today. We are seeing emergence of entirely new business models in consulting and seeing autonomous systems. Fifth Row is an important example of how the shift toward new form of consulting as a product is emerging, and now you have a service layer on top of it. So this is exciting to see how founders like you are pushing this change. And thank you so much for joining the conversation today. I think everyone who is listening really loved the aspect of how you're building a venture, how you're pivoting, and from what you're learning in the market. So, yeah, thank you once again.
Thank you, Tef.